Hello guys and welcome to the video. My name is Nauri Radwan. I'm a concept artist from Algeria and you are tuned to photomanipulation.com. In this channel we take you beyond Photoshop basics and into the world of advanced Photoshop techniques. Enjoy the speed art. Okay, so let's start with the artwork. And in the beginning you will see me just placing my objects. After I cut them from the original background, I will not show you the process of me cutting the objects because it will take a lot of time and we don't have that time. And what you see me doing right now is I highlighted these plants with the lasso tool and then I clicked Shift F5 and I chose content aware so I can remove them immediately from the ground because I didn't like these plants. And this is the fastest way to cut something from your object, is just by highlighting it with the lasso tool and then clicking F5 or go to fill from the edit menu and choose content aware and then click OK. And there's just me cutting the objects and placing them. And here I used the puppet one tool to rotate the leg of my model because as you can see it looks like he was jumping or standing on something high. So what I did is I placed some points on the rest of his body and then I placed one in his leg and then I clicked Alt, and when you click and hold Alt, this circle right there will show in your point, and it's a circle of rotation. So yeah, just rotate it, and just like that I fixed it. And with another point I fixed the direction of his leg. And here I'm fixing values using the levels adjustment layer. First I add a black and white adjustment layer at the top and I set the blend mode to color, and then I start adding levels adjustment layer to the rest of my objects. And the rule here is to make the objects that's closer to the eye darker and the objects that's further from the eye more faded, less contrasted, and less details will be shown. And as you can see here, after I fix the values, all of my objects start to look like it's oversaturated, and the next step is to start desaturate the objects. And here I didn't like these white strokes on my mountain, so I just removed them real quick. And now I started to add color balance adjustment layer set to color blending mode and start to give my objects the color that's the opposite of red and orange of the mountains, that is blue and cyan, as you can see in the screen. And here's the thing, even though my objects are I'm giving my objects the same color, but you will see that the mountain in the back have some more magenta on it, and that's just because of the fade and because I gave it less contrast. So yeah, this is a rule to remember. Your objects in your work doesn't have to say to have the same exact color because values are different. Here I started to use the brush and started to darken some areas in my model that the levels adjustment layer couldn't affect individually. So I did this with a brush. What I'm doing right now is this is a mistake I used to do a lot in my previous work, that when I make my models in my work darker, after I fix the values and make them darker, I just leave them as that. But I learned in my current artwork that when you darken a model, make sure to give it a soft light from above or from the sides, depends on what's your scene lighting is. For me, there is a bright sky in the background. So what I did is I gave him a soft light in his shoulders and his head. And this is the same as a key light when you are a photographer and taking photograph of a model or a portrait. And what I'm doing now is I'm making a lighting for my mountain in the back to give it a feel that there is a sunlight. And what I'm doing right now, as you can see, I'm using the gradient transparent color. The mode is set to hard light, and the opacity is 100. And the reason why I set it in 100 is because I don't want to make that contrasty transition between the light and the dark, because what I'm doing now is I'm making a soft light. So when you are brightening an object, when you are doing a lighting for objects, always remember to add the soft light first and then add the hard light. So I'm now working on the soft light. As you can see, there is no harsh transition between the light and the dark. And what I did is I clicked on Control B. That will bring the color balance, and I give it red and yellow, as just like that. And what I'm doing right now is I'm making the hard light. How I'm doing it is, as you can see, I did the same as the first one, but now I set the mode to linear light and the opacity to 25. And when you set the opacity to 25, that will add a harsh transition between the light and the dark. Unfortunately, the gradient tool didn't do a great job, so I used the brush tool and I set the mode to hard light and the flow to 10%. And as you can see, while I'm painting, the opacity on 10. And while I'm painting right now, there is a harsh light between harsh transition, sorry, between the lights and the dark. Look at the transition. And I set the blender mode to screen, and I gave it the same color, the yellow and the red, using the color balance, Control B. And this is our hard light. I'm just fixing that area that I don't want the light to reach. I didn't like that harsh transition between the light and the dark, so I'm going to do it again. Now, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to do the same with the mountain in the back, the rock in the back, but it failed, so I didn't add the harsh light. I ended up adding the soft light, and yeah, that's it. Because the harsh light didn't work on that mountain, as you can see, that it was too harsh, because the mountain has less details, because it was affected by the sky as he gets further from the camera. Okay, so right here, I used the inner glow. When you click on the object 2 times and that menu pop up, I used the inner glow to, as you can see in the edges right here, I sampled the color from the sky in the back. I set the blender mode to screen and the opacity to 30%. And that's just to give it that transition between the edges of the mountain and the color of the sky, as it is adding that little haze on the edges that will help your objects blend even more. And then I create it as a layer. As you can see, the fill is on 30%, the blender mode on screen, and I painted on the edges that's facing the sky. I did the same with the mountain in the back. And what I did here is I sampled the color from the sky. I added a new layer and I took it to the top and I clipped it to the mountain layer in the back, the rock in the back, and I changed the blender mode to screen, the opacity on 25, and I filled that layer with the color of the sky. Here I'm adding like a little fog effect, but it also didn't work very great. Here I'm adding more soft light on the model just to help him pop out on the screen. It's hard to see the model with the mountain in front of him. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to add some lights so I can help the model pop out. And here I try to change the place of the model, but I like it the place, the first place. I just moved it just a bit from the mountain so we can see him, but I'll still add some more soft lights or the key lights, whatever you want to call it. And here, as you can see, I'm adding clouds. And if you don't know how I add clouds, I did a tutorial before on the channel. Make sure to check it out. I'll put the link on the description, and I might add the thumbnail of the work. And I also talked about how to change the values of the clouds and the color of the clouds. So yeah, make sure to check it out if you want to know how to add clouds. Here I did the same with the mountain. I sampled from the sky in the back. I filled the layer with that color. I set the blender mode to screen and the opacity to 20. And I believe I changed the opacity. No, I didn't. Okay. Here I added this building texture that I got from an image. I just cut it by using the color range and then choosing the yellow color. If you are getting a value from this video, be sure to like and subscribe. It's free, easy, and really supports the channel. Let's continue. And with a soft brush, I'm just trying to add a cool place, trying to find a place of that mountain. Here I'm fixing the values. I'm trying to give the same values, and then I give it the same color of the sky, the fill one. I'm mixing, blending the color, sorry. And I'm getting some details back from the building. Here I didn't like the door and I didn't like the windows, and we will get to that later. So here what I'm trying to do now is adding the soft light as I did with the mountain before, as you can see, and I used the color balance to give it that yellow and red color. And here I'm trying to add the harsh light, and as you can see I'm using the gradient tool with the transparent color, and the mode is on linear light and the opacity is on 25. That will create a harsh transition between the light and the dark. And we just added our harsh light. Here I didn't, as I said before, I didn't like the door and the windows because I wanted to give it the feel that there is some place inside and not just a building texture on a mountain. So I painted with black on both windows and the door, as you can see. And for the rest of this 30 seconds, you will just see me fixing these edges of the door. And as you can see, I give it a value and a color of the rest of the scene just by using levels and color balance. And here with the gradient tool, I tried to add a higher value in the bottom area of the door, just to give it a feel that there is a place inside. It couldn't be just a dark color and that is it. You will have to add the gradient to it. So here what I'm doing to the mountain or the rock in the front, I did the inner glow thing that I did to the mountain technique. And what I regret here is I didn't add here too, because when I posted this image on the social medias, everybody told me that you should have add some light to this edge because it's too hard, it's too sharp, and it looks like it was cutted. So yeah, it's a very easy fix to do, but I just forgot to do it while I'm working on the image. But I added it on the top areas. Here I add another rock, and I fix the values, of course, the same steps I did with the other rocks, the saturation and the colors. And here, as you can see, I gave the mountain the same, this rock that I just added the same color as the ground and the other rock, but the mountain on the left has some yellowish brownish spots, points on it, and the other rock don't. But so what I did is I sampled the color of that brownish spots and I started to paint it on my new rock, as you can see. And then I used the blend if to create a transition, and then I set the blend mode to color. But again, if you see the other rocks, that brownish spots are bright. So what I did is I added a brightness and contrast, as you can see right here, and I masked it just to affect that brownish spots that I added to the rock that I set to color blender mode, and I made it brighter. And I added a hue and saturation adjustment layer to give it to make that color match more with the spots on the other rock, as you can see. Here I tried to add a light reflection on the top of the rock just to give it the feels that the sunlight has reached that area, but I didn't like it, so I just gave up on it. And what I did there is right here, as you can see, just and what I did right there is I added a fill light, fill color. I added an empty color and I sampled from the sky. I used the bucket tool to fill that layer. I set the blender mode to screen, the opacity to 20, and I used the gradient tool to just affect the top areas, as it was a haze coming from the sky. And I did the same with the rock in the back, and I believe I did the same with the mountain in the middle. Yeah, I did the same with the mountain and the texture of the building. Okay, and here I got this image of this dust, this storm of dust right here, and I used the same technique as I did for the clouds. So go watch the clouds tutorial. I did the same thing. I used the magic stamp tool and then the select and mask to cut them. I added to my scene and I fixed the values and the color. It's the same exact technique I used in the how to add clouds and blend them with the scene. I will put the link on the description. I will put the link on the description down below. And I tried to add the reflection of the sunlight on that dust. I'm not gonna lie, this dust gave me the hardest time in this whole artwork. And what I'm doing now is I'm changing the color of the robe, the cloak of the model, just the cloak itself, not the boats. Okay, now here's something I want to talk to you about. So if you look at this rock and the ground, there is some harsh transition between the dark areas and the light areas, and that's logical because when it's ground and it's a rock, there is a harsh transition. But what I wanted to do is I want to give the feels that the rock and the ground are in the same level, and there is some areas of the rock of the ground getting into the bigger rock. So what I'm doing right now is I added brightness and contrast, and I used look here. I use legacy, make sure it's checked, and I tried to give the bottom areas of the rock the same values as the ground. And then with a gradient transparent tool using the white color, I applied it just on the bottom areas, and I added color balance and I gave it the same mask, and I changed the blending mode to color and I tried to give them the same color. Here I added a adjustment layer, levels adjustment layer at the top, and I took the midtones to the right side. That will make it darker, and I painted just to add depth. I painted on the bottom areas and the sides. I did the lights on the ground in the front again because I didn't like the harsh transition between the light and dark areas, the bright and the dark areas in the first one, and this one ended up being better. So I added the soft light and then the hard light, and I gave it a smooth transition with the gradient tool. And here again, I'm changing the color of my model's cloak, and I used the blend if so it doesn't look like it's affecting the dark areas, just the bright areas that I gave the soft light of the sky. And here I did the inner glow thing again, but this time I want it to be just in the head and the shoulders, just to give it a feels that this is the color, the brightness of the sky affecting it. So what I did now is I chose the black brush, the default brush on the black color, and I went to the settings by clicking on F5, and I checked the transfer option, and when you go to the transfer option, you will find the flow and the opacity. Go to the opacity, you will see that the option says off, change it to fill. And now when you paint, the further you go, there is a point where your brush stroke will start to fade. And if you want to know more about the transfer technique, go watch my video on how to paint hair with the pen tool. I will put the link in the description down below, so make sure you check it to know how I did this. And notice now when I'm painting, the shadows start to fade with time. And I gave it a value with the levels, and I gave it the color with the color balance. And I painted on the bottom areas of his legs just to give the same values of his bottom areas of his legs and the shadows. Here I added the skylights. Bad idea. I wish I didn't do that. Okay, so I did the same with this mountain right now. I gave it the same values of the ground just to add the feels like there is some sand going into that rock, because I didn't like the very very dark transition between that dark areas and the bright areas. And that one worked better, as you can see, and I'm giving it the same colors with the color balance, as you can see, and adding more soft lights on the upper area of the model. And now, as you can see, the model start to stand more in the image. Now you can see him better. And now, as you can see, as I said before, the dust was taking a lot of space, so I just took it down and I started to erase some areas, and that worked better in my image. Here I painted a other mountain in the back, because I didn't like that area just being white, empty. So it was just a gray, 50% gray paint, and I gave it the color just like that. It was just a simple paint with a dark gray, and I gave it the color, nothing too complicated. And here I'm adding the golden color to his clothes. I don't know what they call this area. Using, of course, the gradient adjustment layer. Gradient map adjustment layer, sorry. And I give it dark areas in the shadows just to give it some depth. And now I'm trying to do the final touch. I tried it with the selective colors, didn't work, so I tried it with a color balance. It worked good, but I didn't like that the color balance is affecting the whole image. So what I did is I went to the color channels. I used the red and the green together. The red and the blue, and I masked it to the color balance, so it just affects the bright areas. And I gave the bright areas the red and the yellow tones with the color balance. And what I'm doing now is I'm making the mask having more contrast by clicking on the mask, click on Ctrl L, that will bring the levels properties. And yeah, I just made the dark areas darker and the bright areas brighter, so that color balance adjustment layer don't affect the dark areas. And as you can see, it's only affecting the bright areas. And now I chose the green and the blue, and that's supposed to be the color balance. I used the curves. Okay, so I used the curves, and what I'm trying to do now is just to affect the dark areas. Okay, so with the curves, I added red, green, and blue. I believe I changed it. So as you can see with the red, in the shadows I added the cyan, and the highlights I added the red, and the blue I just added blue, the green, I added green, and that gave it this cyanish tone on the dark areas. And with a curves, I just wanted to add a high contrast between the dark areas and the bright areas, just to give it depth. Okay, guys, so look what I did here is I clicked on added a empty layer, and I clicked Shift, Control, Alt, and E, and that will merge all the layers with the adjustment layer and put the final image at the top. I converted to a smart object so I can add the smart sharpen, and it will work more accurate on the smart objects. So I did that. And then what I did is I went to my layers. I clicked Alt and clicked on the model layer, and then I clicked Alt and I selected the rock layer, and I clicked Alt and clicked on the ground, and then Alt and clicked on that rock. And as you can see now, they are all selected. And then I went to the smart filter. I clicked on Shift F5 and I made it black, and then clicked Control and I to invert it. So now that smart object, that smart sharpen, is only affecting my front objects, that's the rocks and the model. And as you can see now, they are and as you can see now, I gave them the sharp, but it was too sharp, so I tried to cool it down just a bit. And yeah, so this is it, guys, for this image. I hope you get some ideas for your works. I hope you learned something from it. And if you want to know more on this techniques and how I use them, make sure to get my digital landscape course. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free, easy, and really supports the channel. And also follow us on our social medias. And I will see you in the next videos. Peace.